witness.
Under the state called Special Agent Stephen Walczak.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please have a seat, watch your step, and speak up for the benefit of Madam Court reporter.
Would you please state and spell your name for the jury?
Yes, my name is Stephen Walczak. That is Stephen Walczak.
And where are you employed?
I'm employed with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation in the Jackson Crime Lab in the Forensic Biology Unit.
And how many years have you been with TBI?
I've been there for almost 5 years.
Can you describe to the jury what your duties and responsibilities are?
Yes, working in the Forensic Biology Unit, I am required to test evidence for the presence of bodily fluids and then attempt to take that through the DNA analysis process to create a DNA profile.
And what is your educational background?
I have a Bachelor's of Science in Forensic Biology with a minor in Chemistry from Ashland University.
And describe for the jury how someone becomes a DNA analyst.
So you have to have a degree in a natural science, kind of like forensic science, biology, or chemistry. And then at the TBI, you also have to have at least 24 hours of chemistry. And then if you meet those requirements, you will get hired on and then go through a 18-month training process.
And is your work peer reviewed?
Yes, the work is peer reviewed by 2 other analysts in the lab.
And do you have a continuing education requirement?
Yes, there's at least an 8-hour-a-year continuing education requirement that's within the Forensic Biology Unit.
And have you ever testified as an expert in forensic biology?
Yes, I have.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would tender Special Agent Stephen Walczak as an expert in forensic biology.
Hearing no objection.
Now, Agent Walczak, what does forensic biology encompass?
Forensic biology encompasses the testing of evidence for the presence of bodily fluids like blood, semen, and saliva, as well as touch DNA. And then the DNA analysis process consists of 4 steps where I isolate the DNA in the first step. The second step, I determine how much DNA is present. The third step, I attempt to make copies of the DNA that is present. And then the fourth step is trying to generate a DNA profile.
Now, Agent Walczak, did you receive items for forensic testing in the homicide case of Danielle Hoyle?
Yes, I did.
And as part of that analysis that you conducted, did you generate a report?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to hand you a document and see if you recognize it.
Yes, this appears to be a copy of the report that I issued on June 29th, 2023, and it has my my signature on the report.
Your Honor, I would ask that the report be entered as the next exhibit, Exhibit 192. Your Honor, may I have permission to publish?
Go ahead, please.
All right. Now, Agent Walczak, can you tell us what you received in this case?
So anytime evidence is submitted to the lab, it comes in on a request for examination form that outlines what is submitted. And so upon receiving the evidence, I itemized each one, which you can see as the exhibits that are up there as 001-A through 006-H. And so, would you like me to go through and read all of them?
Yes, please.
Okay. So Exhibit 1A, which was a blood standard from Danielle Hoyle. Exhibit 2A, which is a saliva standard from Brandon Isabelle. 3A is a swab from the shoe found in Brandon Isabelle's vehicle. 4A are shoes from 5061 Stacy Road. 5A is a sweatshirt from Brandon Isabelle. 6A is a white sock from Brandon Isabelle. 6B is a sock from Brandon Isabelle. 6C is a black sock from Brandon Isabelle. 6D, a black sock from Brandon Isabelle. 6E, a white t-shirt from Brandon Isabelle. 6F, black sweatpants from Brandon Isabelle. 6G, left Croc shoe from Brandon Isabelle. And for 6H, a right Croc shoe from Brandon Isabelle.
Now, Agent, when you receive items for testing, does law enforcement give you what's called a statement of facts?
Yes. On the request for examination form, it outlines who is submitting it, when they're being submitted, and also a statement of facts regarding the case.
And does that statement of facts help guide your examination of the evidence?
Yes, we use the statement of facts to help guide which testing would be most appropriate for that case.
And do you also sometimes communicate with the investigators in the case?
Yes, if any questions arise throughout the testing process, either before, during, or after, I can reach out to the numbers that are listed on the request for examination form and ask those questions to the agency.
And did you consult with the investigators in this particular case?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to hand you an item that's previously been entered as Exhibit 66 and see if you recognize it. Do you recognize that item?
Yes, I do. So this is a envelope that is submitted by the agency. And anytime the agency submits evidence to the lab, it goes through our evidence receiving unit, who will give it a unique barcode with a unique identifier, which is the case number and exhibit number. Once I retrieve that evidence from the evidence receiving unit, I will put my initials, which are right here. And then when I'm done testing the item, I put the TBI Crime Lab evidence tape at the bottom, which my initials are on.
And is that the blood standard for Danielle Hoyle 1A?
Yes, this is Exhibit 1A, the blood standard from Danielle Hoyle.
And Agent, tell the jury, what do you do with that, or what did you do with the blood standard for Danielle Hoyle?
The blood standard will go through the complete DNA analysis process to create a known DNA profile for that person. A known DNA profile is necessary because if I test any unknown evidence and I obtain the DNA profile, I can compare the known person's DNA to the unknown from the item and say whether that profile from the evidence is or is not that person.
And were you able to get a DNA profile from Danielle Hoyle's blood spot?
Yes, I was.
Now, did you also receive a saliva standard from Brandon Isabelle?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to hand you what's previously been entered as Exhibit 189. Do you recognize that item?
Yes, I do. It has the same exact markings that I mentioned earlier, the unique identifier, my initials, the TBI lab seal with my initials, and this is Exhibit 2A, which would be the saliva standard from Brandon Isabelle.
And did you take that through the same process that you did the blood standard from Danielle Hoyle?
Yes, I did.
And were you able to get a DNA profile from those swabs?
Yes, I obtained a DNA profile for comparison for both the blood spot and the saliva standard.
Now, Agent, I would like to direct your attention to item 3A. What is that item?
Item 3A is a swab from the shoe found in Brandon Isabelle's vehicle.
I'm going to hand you what's previously been entered as Exhibit 190. Do you recognize that item?
Yes, I do. Again, it has the unique barcode with the unique identifier as Exhibit 3A, my initials and seal from where I worked it, and it is the swab from the shoe found in his vehicle.
Now, Agent, can you walk us through the testing process you went through on item 3A, the swab from the shoe found in Brandon Isabelle's vehicle?
Yes, so I received this item of evidence from the evidence receiving unit. I will document the packaging as it is, just describe what's there on paper. I'll open it up, do the same thing, describe what is inside, and then once I've completed my documentation, I will take the swab out and visually examine that. And an indicator that I'm looking for is a reddish brown stain. That is an indication that blood may be present. So once I determined that there was RBS present on the swab, I went through the blood testing that I would perform on samples that have RBS.
And can you walk us through how do you test for blood?
So if there's RBS on the swab, I will take the swab and rub it on a little piece of filter paper, and then I will add the first test we do. There are 2 chemicals that are added, and if the presence of blood, if there is blood present, the possibility of blood present, there will be 2 color changes. One will turn pink, one will turn a blue-green, and in this case, both chemicals turned blue-green and pink, which is an indication that blood is present.
Now, Agent, do you normally take it through a second test to determine whether it's blood?
Yes, the second test that is highlighted up there, where it says presumptive immunological testing for the presence of human hemoglobin, was not performed. That is a test that's kind of like an at-home COVID test or a pregnancy test, where if 2 lines show up, it is positive. If there's only 1 line, it is negative for that component. However, that is based on the amount of sample that is present on the swabs. And per my training and my experience with limited amounts of sample, I decided not to go through that process and then just take it through the DNA process instead of doing that immunological test.
But the initial chemical test did test positive for blood, is that right?
Yes, the presumptive chemical testing indicated the presence of blood, yes.
Right. And so you mentioned you then took that swab through DNA testing. And walk us through that. What did you do?
So there was only 1 swab submitted, and there was a little bit of RBS that I mentioned on the swab. And after performing that first chemical test, I cut a portion of that swab and took it through the DNA analysis process in hopes to generate a DNA profile.
And were you able to generate a profile from 3A?
Yes, I was.
And what were your results?
So up there under 3A, that second line, that talks about the DNA process and the DNA profile. So the DNA profile obtained matches Exhibit 1A, Danielle Hoyle.
And did you determine that by comparing the DNA profile that you found on that swab to the standard for Danielle Hoyle?
Yes, once I generated the DNA profile for Exhibit 3A, it was just at the time an unknown. And then once I compared it to the 2 standards that were present, the blood standard from Danielle Hoyle and the saliva standard from Brandon Isabelle, the profile from that swab matched Danielle Hoyle, and Brandon Isabelle was excluded as being a contributor to that profile.
And is there a statistic associated with your results?
Yes. I'm just going to read my statement here. The probability of randomly selecting an unrelated individual who would be included as a contributor of the DNA profile is 1 in a number greater than the world population for the African American, Caucasian, and Southwestern Hispanic populations.
Now, you have an additional statement here. In addition, it starts with an additional allele was obtained. Can you explain to the jury what that means?
So an additional allele is talking about the DNA profile. So a DNA profile looks like a series of peaks, kind of like a heart rate monitor. It has a couple of peaks. And each one of those peaks is what we call a piece of information. And so at that marker where it says at the Y indel marker, that is a male sex determining marker. So a female profile will not have that. A male profile will. However, in this profile, there was only one extra piece of information that was present, and it happened to be at that Y indel marker, which I indicate is from the presence of at least one male. And due to that limited information, interpretation of this additional allele is inconclusive for comparison purposes, which just means I can't do anything with that one little bit of information. I can't say anything about that other than that it's present.
Now, did you also take 6A through DNA analysis?
Yes, 6A was the white sock from Brandon Isabelle.
I'm going to hand you what's previously been entered as elective exhibit 188. Do you recognize those exhibits?
Yes, these are the brown paper bags that were submitted as Exhibit 6 as a whole. There's multiple of these brown paper bags in Exhibit 6, and then each one of these brown paper bags got its own exhibit number. So this one here says left Nike sock, right Nike sock, and I have my initials and the case number and whatever exhibit this was. Here's the case number for this case, 006-A, which is the left sock. That is listed here, and then this is 6B, the right sock. And I did not do any testing on the 6B, as there are no cuts or any sort of evidence tape where I would have marked where I entered the package, except for on 6A here, there is the additional seal that has my initials on it, where I had entered and actually tested the item that was in this bag.
Now, Agent, on 6A, did you take it through that same process that we just discussed on 3A?
Yes, I did.
And did you go through that initial testing with regards to trying to determine whether the stain was blood?
Yes, for this exhibit, so this was a sock that was submitted, and once I had taken the sock out of the bag, I visually examined it and looked at it to see if there was any of that reddish brown staining that I had seen earlier on the swab, and there was indication of RBS on the sock. So therefore I took a look at the sock as a whole, inside and out, to see if I could find a spot where the staining may have been darker or more concentrated, and there was. And so I tested that area with the chemical testing, both chemicals that turned to blue, green, and pink. Tested that area, it was positive for both of those chemicals. This time there was enough staining present to do that second test, and that was also positive.
And so by those two tests being positive, that indicates to you that this is blood.
It's a good indication that blood is present, yes.
Would you open that package, Agent? Agent, after doing that testing with regards to trying to determine whether that stain was blood, did you then take that through DNA analysis?
Yes, I did.
And can you describe that process for the jury with regards to the sock?
Yeah, so this is the sock that I had obtained, and the staining that you can see, the yellowish staining and the brown staining kind of along the backside of this as well. That was the indication that I got when I first received the sock, that there may be a possibility of blood being present on the sock. So when I tested, so there is a hole that's right here on the sock. That is the area that I had tested for the presence of blood and for that immunological test, where both were present from that area. And with the sizable hole that is there, I took a big enough cutting from there to take forward through that DNA analysis process. And once I took it through the process, I took it through all 4 steps, and I did generate a DNA profile from this area on the sock.
And what were your results?
So I called this stain number 1, referring to that specific area. And so I mentioned that the presumptive chemical testing indicated the presence of blood. The presumptive immunological testing indicated the presence of human hemoglobin, which is a component of human blood. And the DNA profile that I obtained is consistent with a mixture of at least 2 individuals, including at least 1 male. The major contributor is consistent with Exhibit 1A, Danielle Hoyle. And Exhibit 2A, Brandon Isabelle, is excluded as a contributor to the major profile. And due to the limited minor contributor profile, the minor is inconclusive for comparison purposes.
So, Agent Walczak, with 3A, the swab from the shoe found in Brandon Isabelle's vehicle, the DNA on that swab was a match to Danielle Hoyle, is that correct?
Yes, it was a single source profile, which means it's contributing from 1 person, and it was a match to Danielle Hoyle.
And 6A, the left white sock from Brandon Isabelle. The DNA profile from the sock matches to Danielle Hoyle, is that right?
The DNA profile obtained that there was at least 2 individuals present, so based on the training and experience that I have in the forensic biology unit on interpreting DNA profiles, I can say that there are at least 2 people contributing, but at different amounts. So when I talk about a major profile, that means someone who's contributing a lot more DNA than the one or other persons that are present. So when I talk about the major profile being consistent with her, is that she is contributing more DNA to that stain than somebody else is.
Agent, when you're doing DNA analysis, what kinds of things produce a more robust sample?
Bodily fluids do contain more DNA, so that'd be like blood, semen, saliva. They do contain more DNA than just like going ahead and touching something and leaving a couple of skin cells behind. The actual bodily fluid is what contains the most amount of DNA.
Last witness.
Go ahead, please.
Special Agent Walczak, who decides what to send you to test?
That would be up to the submitting agency. So in this case, the Memphis Police Department is the one who filled out the request for examination form with the items of evidence that are being submitted. So I go by what the agency has submitted.
So you don't just out of the blue reach down to Memphis and say, I want to see these specimens, get samples from this particular clothing. They come to you and send you particular evidence to test.
Yes, they will have a case and they will request DNA testing or serology testing on items of evidence for their case, and then they specify what items they want for each discipline within the lab if it's applicable.
Was any forensic evidence sent to you on Artesia Stewart?
There were no items of evidence from that individual.
No blood, no swabs, no clothing?
No, there was no evidence of her.
No other questions, thank you.
Any redirect from the state?
Just very briefly, Agent Walczak, all of the exhibits, 3A, 1A, 2A, 3A, and 6A, did those arrive to TBI in a sealed condition?
Yes, all the evidence that was submitted was sealed. That is one of the precautions that our evidence receiving unit takes to ensure that their evidence is intact. If it comes in unsealed, the evidence will have to be sealed prior to submittal.
That's all I have, thank you.
Any recall?
No other questions?
Thank you, sir. You may sit down.
They do have, mentioned this a little bit earlier, it is a stipulation to the chain of custody that both sides agree to. If I could have this entered as,
This is a Florida.
yes, Your Honor. We have this marked as exhibit number 193.
Thank you.
If I could read this out to the jury.
Go ahead.
Good. Comes now the state of Tennessee and the counsel for the defendant, both of whom agreed to stipulate that on June 30, 2022, criminalist Lindsay Flores with the Memphis Police Department retrieved Adidas swabs from the Adidas slides, white socks, and the defendant's buckle swab from the Memphis Police Department's property and evidence room at 201 Poplar. She also retrieved the blood spot of Danielle Hoyle from the property and evidence room. All of these items were properly sealed and delivered by Ms. Flores to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation for DNA testing. That is signed by counsel for both sides.
All counsel from all sides.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Your Honor,
Thank you.
and including Mr. Isabelle.
Thank you.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the state rests its case in chief at this time.